Bullets and Blondes. Written by Clark Graham. Narrated by Daniel Nicolai. Chapter 1. It doesn't mean anything. Barry Hibbard tried to reassure himself as he looked at all the pottery pieces spread across the floor. He had known better than to leave the vase on the pedestal after the last close call. Instead of putting it in a safer spot, he had become more particular as to who he allowed over. This guest, however, was uninvited. He turned back towards her. She was beautiful, with penetrating blue eyes and smooth skin. Blonde hair stuck out past the edges of the gray hoodie. Her features reminded him of a porcelain doll, but unlike most porcelain dolls, this one had a shotgun. When he heard the crash, he was almost asleep. It was something that took more and more effort after all the stresses he had endured during the past year. He had grabbed a baseball bat out of the hall closet and then tiptoed down the stairs. When he reached the bottom, he'd flipped on the light, revealing the intruder. She pointed the gun at him. Instinctively, he dropped the bat and raised his hands over his head. "Where's the Rex battery?" she demanded. "The what?" "Don't play stupid with me, buddy. I want the battery." I am stupid. I don't know what you're talking about." Propping the shotgun on her hip, she creased her forehead, pulling a crumpled slip of paper out of her pocket. "This is 2471 Country Club Lane, right?" He motioned with his head, leaving his hands in the air. "Next door." She turned pale, making her rosy cheeks stand out even more. "Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry." He just shrugged. I'll pay for your pot. How much?" She pulled out her wallet. He'd paid $20,000 for it, but it was insured for 3 times more. Unfortunately, he couldn't replace it for that amount. $97,500. Her mouth gaped open. "For an urn?" "It's a vase. Ming Dynasty, Wan Li period. Made in the late 1590s. She covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my goodness." She slipped the wallet back in her pocket. "Don't worry. It's insured." "Sorry," she said, and then turned and crawled out the same window she had climbed in. He put his hands back down to his side. It does too matter, he thought, wiping back a tear. He listed all the things that had left, died, or broken during the year. First the wife, then the dog, and now the vase. He'd known the latch on the window was broken for the last month. It was on his list of things to get fixed. It was a long list that also included the alarm system. It hadn't been a huge priority for him until today. There was one thing he was going to do first, though. "It's 2 o'clock in the morning," Raymond protested as he answered the phone. It broke. "What are you talking about? And why are you waking me?" "The Ming. It broke." "That's too bad," the sarcastic voice said. "Oh, that is too bad." The tone brightened, and Barry knew Raymond was calculating the commission in his head. "I want another one. It's 3 in the afternoon in Paris. You can call one of the art houses there and have one on its way before I get back up." "You're going to bed?" "Of course. It's 2 o'clock in the morning." Not wanting to hear Raymond's rude reply, Barry didn't wait for an answer. He walked over to the vase, looked down at the pieces, and thought about gluing it back together. It wouldn't be worth anything in that condition, but Barry couldn't take another loss in his life right now. As he gazed at it, he realized there were just too many small pieces. It would be up to the maid to clean it up when she got in. Not wanting a repeat of the break-in, Barry went out to the garage and brought in a hammer and nail. With the window secured, he went back to bed. As he lay there staring at the ceiling, too upset to sleep, his mind was racing. Something had to change. It was one loss after another, and he couldn't take it anymore. A year ago, he had the ideal life: a supermodel wife, a rare Tibetan Mastiff dog, and a beautiful Ming Dynasty vase. Now, all three were gone. The first two had left the same day. The wife stormed out, claiming he loved his things more than he loved her. She left the door open, and the dog ran into the street and was run over. He had paid $6,000 for the dog, and the wife had cost him much, much more in the divorce. During therapy, his psychologist kept mentioning he shouldn't put a price tag on every aspect of his life, but he couldn't help it. Everything was assigned a value in his mind. Luckily, he had signed a prenuptial with the wife, so she didn't take him to the cleaners, but she still walked away with a cool $1,000,000. Somewhere between 5 and 6, as the sun was just coming up, he drifted off into a fitful sleep. Chapter 2. Barry woke up, dressed, and headed downstairs. The broken vase was still there, but with a wide-eyed maid staring at the pieces. "It broke?" she asked in her broken English. She stood about 5'4" and had long, thick black hair that she pulled into a bun on the back of her head. He loved the way that she talked. She was the world's best maid in his opinion, standing there in the knee-length light blue dress with the matching white lace apron. Rosita had been in the United States longer than he had been alive, but she had never mastered the language. Having been his father's maid before she was his, she was part of the family, especially since Barry had an absent mother. Rosita was the one who sent him off to school, made sure he did his homework, and loved him when no one else seemed to. Yes, it broke in the night. Nothing to do but sweep it away. "But, Signor." I know. He wiped back another tear, took a deep breath. "I'll get another. This time, I'll put it somewhere safe." "See." She headed into the hall closet and brought back a broom and dustpan. He couldn't watch. It was like seeing a dear friend pulled out of a crash, one piece at a time. Going into the kitchen, he peered out the window and saw an ugly car in his neighbor's driveway. It was the same ugly car the police used as patrol cars. The type of car no one else would buy, so only the police would use them. They even used them as unmarked units, as if driving an ugly car without markings would fool anybody. Curiosity got the best of Barry. He grabbed a measuring cup out of the drawer and walked down the street to his next-door neighbors. When Fred Casper opened up the thick wooden door, he looked down at the shorter Barry. "Can I borrow a cup of sugar?" Fred frowned. "Are you baking? You have people for that." "The cook's not here yet, and I had a cake roll craving." Barry knew that Fred didn't believe him, but he let him in anyways. Leading him to the kitchen, Fred put the sugar canister on the cupboard. "Here you go." A man in a cheap suit and thin mustache came around the corner. "Oh," Fred added, "this is Detective Adams. Did you see anyone prowling around during the night? Someone tried to break in. I think the alarm scared them away." "Can't say that I did." Barry thought for a minute. "Alarm? I didn't hear any alarm during the night." "Okay, there wasn't an alarm. I kept setting it off 2 or 3 times a night and the security company cut me off. I sleepwalk. That doesn't mean someone didn't try to break in. There were pry bar marks on my windows and doors." "What were they after?" Barry asked. He wanted so badly to find out about this Rex battery that had the beautiful thief prowling the night. "I have no idea. It's not like I have a Ming Dynasty vase sitting in the middle of the room like you do. Maybe they were trying to break into the wrong house." Barry had to swallow a laugh. "No, I don't think that's it. Is there something of great value in here? Like the mysterious Rex battery, perhaps?" "No, I can't think of anything." "Well, thanks for the sugar, and it was nice to meet you, Detective." The man in the suit just nodded. Barry thought the officer was looking right through him. Could he tell Barry was lying? It didn't matter. He didn't owe his neighbor anything. Fred Casper wasn't a proper name for one of the town's rich and famous in Barry's mind. He was new money, and probably ill-gotten at that. Barry walked home. He was no wiser than he was before. When he came back into the house, Ava was there. She was the cook. Being Rosita's daughter, her and Barry had grown up together. She was the sister he never had. Her dark, wide eyes and thin waist made her a real head-turner when she walked down the street. It was all lost on Barry, though. His love for her ran deeper than just looks. She was family in his mind, not a romantic interest. He sat the sugar down on the counter just in time to get hugged. "The vase broke. I'm so sorry that happened. Are you okay?" Her sympathy got the best of him. He took several deep breaths to keep from losing it. "I will be, I hope." His eyes watered up again. "What can I do?" She stepped back to look him in the eye. He wiped away the tears. "I'm going to get another one," he sighed. "It's only a matter of time." "Good." She turned and saw the measuring cup. "You borrowed sugar? We have lots." "I'm craving a cake roll." He wasn't. He didn't really like them, but that was the excuse he was going with. He had used it next door. Might as well be consistent. "Sure, anything. You're having a rough day." Chapter 3. While waiting for the cake roll to bake, Barry pulled out his phone. He contacted the handyman and the insurance adjuster. After he hung up from the second call, he looked around. It wasn't his house, it was his father's. The hardwood floors were what his father wanted. The furniture was his father's style, and each piece still sat where his father had placed them. The white paint was the only color he had decided on. Barry had never made the place his own. The living room had been the scene of the family's many parties. His mother had been a social butterfly who partied all night and slept all day. Fast living had gotten the best of her. She died while Barry was still a teenager. His father had pressed on, but the house became barren. All the pictures were gone. The rooms, which previously had deep carpeting and warm-colored walls, all became hardwood and white. Barry hated it. His father hung on several more years after the cancer hit him, but in the end, Barry was only 20 when he too died. Barry couldn't take the loneliness, so he married quick, but wrong. The marriage was over in less than a year. The house was still as his father left it. Having the vase smack dab in the middle of the room was Barry's one act of defiance. His father would have hated it there. That had turned out to be disastrous, though. When his phone went off, Barry glanced at the name, then picked it up. "Yes, Raymond?" "I have one. It's very close to the one you have. I'm emailing you the invoice as we speak. It was $101,000. I tried to talk them down." $101,000? No, you didn't try to talk them down. Either that or you suck at it. Okay, I didn't try to talk them down. You called me at 2 in the morning. They will crate it and air freight it. It should be here in a few days. Barry sighed. Fine. Bye. Raymond hung up. Smelling the cake, Barry went into the kitchen. Ava had set it down on the counter. Looks good so far. Yes, I have to let it cool, then I can finish it. I have another vase coming. Ava's whole face lit up. I'm so happy for you. She hugged him again. Thank you. Now, if you can just find another wife and dog, you will be a complete man again. I can be a complete man without a wife and dog, he protested. She smiled that half-smile that told him she wasn't buying it. Sure, maybe you can find someone nice this time. He just shook his head. She was finishing up the cake when the doorbell rang. Rosita went to answer it. Soon, she escorted Fred into the kitchen. Fred? Barry was surprised to see him. He rarely came over, and only when there was a social gathering with food. I heard rumors of a cake roll. The large man sat down next to Barry without being invited. I'm just finishing it up. Ava got down dishes and poured milk into cups. She then placed the cake in front of Barry and Fred. She had spread out cream cheese and strawberry jam on the thin yellow cake before she rolled it up. The slices on the plate were very decorative, with little red, white, and yellow swirls. Looks good, said Fred. He waited for Ava to leave the room before he continued. I lied to the police. Barry jerked his head back in mock surprise. Really? Why? I am missing something out of the house. Barry hoped Fred would say something about the Rex battery. What are you missing? Mid-bite, Fred turned and stared at Barry for a moment. I think you know. It was one of those times where he would have used his poker face. Barry didn't know how much Fred knew, so he didn't want to give his cards away just yet. Nope, I don't read minds. There were footprints in front of my house. I traced them over here. Fred glared. I went over and borrowed some sugar, remember? Fred's cheeks turned red. He went back to his cake. Oh, yeah. What are you missing anyway? Barry won that round, but still wanted information. Can't say. Let me get this straight. You didn't tell the police that something was stolen, and those people you do tell, you can't say what it was. How on earth do you ever expect to get it back? Good question. Fred stood up and took 2 steps for the door. He then turned back, grabbed the rest of his cake roll, and stuffed it into his mouth. He mumbled something through the cake on his way out of the house. Barry thought he said, "This is good," but he couldn't be sure. New money, no manners. It was one of the few things Barry's mother taught him, manners and etiquette. She spent her time teaching him which fork to use and how to break rolls downward onto a bread plate so as not to spread crumbs. She even taught him how to properly use his napkin. His mother was the first loss in his life full of losses. Chapter 4. Barry could stand it no more. Fred hadn't been forthcoming, and he was curious, so he walked into the library and powered up the computer. When it came online, he looked up Rex battery. According to the search, it didn't exist. Scratching his head, he went back into the living room. Rosita was dusting. He looked around and said, I'm going to paint this room. I can't stand it anymore. Rosita stepped back and looked around. See, she said, then went back to her dusting. When the doorbell rang, she put her feather duster down and answered the door. Bob, the handyman, walked in. At least that's what his shirt always said. It could have been someone else's shirt. Barry was never sure. As long as the man answered to Bob, Barry was okay. You called, Mr. Hibbard? Bob looked at the empty pedestal. Where's your picture? Vase. It was a vase. Ming Dynasty. He gave up when he saw Bob's blank stare. He might as well have been speaking Martian. It broke. That's too bad. It was such a nice picture. All that fancy painting on the side. It was pretty. Thanks, I'm getting a new one, but I want a better place to put it. I need you to build me a bookshelf along this wall. I want a light in an enclosed glass case that has enough room for the new vase I'm getting. Oh, sure. Where do you get those pictures? Walmart? No, somewhere a little more expensive. Sure, no problem. I also need you to fix the window. The latch is broken. Bob walked over to it. You nailed it? Why didn't you call me? I could have fixed it. Now it's going to take me extra work to repair the jamb, too. Extra work, extra money. You'll be okay. Bob sighed. I'll draw you up a sketch for the shelves before I start working on them. If you like it, I'll order the lumber. Great. Bob went over and measured the wall. He was still at the table sketching the plans when the doorbell rang again. Busy today, Rosita said as she headed to answer it. A nice man in a gray suit with matching slacks was escorted in. "I'm Jim Peterson, the insurance adjuster. I understand you put in a claim for the amount of 60,000? He seemed to choke up a little bit on the amount. "Yes, my vase broke." Barry was still feeling sad about it. "So?" Jim shrugged. Ming Dynasty, 16th century. "Oh, I see. I'll have to look at it." "It broke. I had the maid throw it away." Jim opened his mouth to say something, but Rosita spoke first. "I have." She went out and brought in a cardboard box with the pieces in it. "Broken pottery. Is this really worth 6,000? I mean, I have to check for fraud." Not pottery, it was a vase. A very expensive vase. Barry stomped out of the room and came back a few moments later with the invoice for the new one. "This is what it costs to replace it." "Ouch," Jim said as he read the paperwork. "You couldn't do better than that?" "Not at 2 a.m., especially when I have to wake people." "You'll have your check in a week or two. Thank you for your cooperation." Jim turned and showed himself out. Despite all of the annoying people Barry had to deal with, today was looking up. Considering the day started out with him looking down the barrel of a gun with a broken vase at his feet. What is a Rex battery anyway? He wondered again. "Lunch is ready," Ava called from the kitchen. "Didn't I just eat?" "That wasn't food, that was cake. You need real food in you." Ava could be so motherly if Barry let her. Not wanting to argue, he made his way to the table, where he, Ava, and Rosita sat down for lunch, like they always did this time of day. It was something that wouldn't fly when his father was still alive, but Barry saw no reason to eat alone, so this was how they did it now. Bob wandered in a few minutes later with the drawn-up plans in his hand. "Won't you join us?" Barry asked. "Boy, that smells good. It's better than the bologna sandwich I was going to eat." He sat down across from Barry. Picking up the plans, Barry studied them. The enclosed glass case was on top, and instead of open shelves below that, Bob had put in doors like a cabinet. "It looks great. Go ahead and order the lumber. After lunch, of course." Bob didn't answer. His mouth was already full of spaghetti with bolognese sauce. Well, at least he doesn't talk with his mouth full, Barry thought. Chapter 5. "I need your signature and a check," Raymond said. It was an odd way to answer the phone. "I don't have the insurance money yet. I'll get it to you." "They won't ship it until they have a signed contract and the money." Barry thought about slamming down the phone. But if he did, Raymond might cancel the deal. He had been acting odd lately. Making Barry pay full price was further evidence. "Okay, I'll meet you at the country club restaurant in an hour. I'll bring my checkbook." "No, that's a long drive from me over here in Poorsville. I'll meet you at the coffee shop downtown, corner of Main and First." Barry shook his head. He wanted so badly to strangle Raymond right now. Who's getting the commission on this deal? Who called whom at 2 in the morning? Besides, you want the vase really bad. Fine. Barry waited until Raymond hung up. He was about to throw his phone across the room, but didn't want Rosita to have to clean up any more than she already had. So, he stuffed it in his pocket. Poorsville indeed. It's not like Raymond was living in a slum. Bob had left, and Ava was cleaning up from lunch. "I'm going downtown," he said to no one in particular. "Bye," Ava replied. She gave him a dazzling smile. He had been heartbroken when she got engaged, worrying she would quit. She was moving forward in her life, and he was not. The garage door opened, revealing a red Ferrari Testarossa. It had been his father's car. He hated it. Fun to drive, but he couldn't park it anywhere that he couldn't watch it, for fear it would get stolen. It was so low, he felt he was sitting on the ground when he was in it. Going to a drive-up window was hard, like when he had to reach way up to get his dry cleaning. But the worst part was when he drove down the street, a lot of guys stared at him. Really, they were just staring at the car, but it was still unnerving. He had wanted to sell it, but his wife wouldn't let him. She even tried to get it in the divorce, but her wanting it was reason enough for him to keep the car. He parked the car right in front of the coffee shop so he could keep an eye on it out the window. He arrived early. Traffic had been light, and he had wanted to get some frustrations out, so he had been heavy on the gas. It wasn't a fancy place like the country club. Just walk up to the counter and order food and drink, and then hope you could find a recently wiped off table to sit at. The place was busy, with a lot of students there from a nearby college. A girl caught his attention. She was sitting behind a laptop, typing something. A stack of books, including an applied mathematics one on top, told him she was going to school here. It was the ceramic, doll-like face he was staring at. It's her. The burglar. He sat down across from her, but she was so intent on what she was doing, she didn't notice. How did your battery shopping go? She looked up over the laptop, and her eyes narrowed. Then the light came on, and they were wide open, like saucers. The urn guy. It's a vase. A vase! He said it louder than he had intended. She rapidly stuffed her books into her bag, and he knew she was about to bolt. He grabbed her arm. I'm not reporting you to the police. Please, stay. She was standing at this point, reaching for her laptop. She paused, looked around for a moment, and then sat back down. What do you want? Name your price. I don't want this hanging over my head anymore. That's not the person I am. Well, normally anyway. I was desperate. At least you got your battery back. I hear from my next-door neighbor it was stolen. What? Her eyes went wide again. His house was like Fort Knox. I couldn't get in. Who would have taken it then? I don't know. Her face darkened. Wait, I do know. It was Donald. Donald. Really? Like Donald Duck? She looked at him. No, like Donald, my lab partner in chemistry. I complained to him about it. He must have taken it. Raymond sat down next to Barry. There you are. This place isn't usually this crowded. They just added free Wi-Fi, so all of the college students are starting to flock here. He looked at the girl. Who's your friend? Barry didn't have anything, so he stopped at that. Let's not go there, she said. Raymond just shrugged his shoulders and turned to Barry. I need a check for $101,000 even, and here is a bill of sale. $101,000? What on earth for? She looked at Barry and then back at Raymond. Barry didn't answer. He was busy making out the check. His vase was broken, so he's buying another one. She gasped, putting both hands over her mouth. Oh, I've got to go. She picked up her bag and computer in one smooth motion and was out the door in half a second. But I didn't get your name. It was too late. She was gone. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt while you were making the moves on that girl. Barry glared at him. Just shut up, will you? Here's your check. Chapter 6. Rosita and Ava were gone by the time Barry arrived home. There was a note on the table telling him to put dinner in the microwave for 2 minutes. Deciding to go out instead, he left the food in the fridge. It would be one less meal Ava would have to cook tomorrow. The country club restaurant was busy when he arrived, but the waiter sat Barry in his favorite table in an out-of-the-way corner. The furniture was dark, and the place was badly lit. If not for the faux candles on the table, he couldn't have read the menu. It didn't matter to him. He had it memorized. The waiter didn't bother to take his order, just put it in. Like the menu, his order never changed. Crab cakes for a starter, followed by the eggplant parmesan. Barry stared out the large window at the darkness while he waited for his food. He heard the distant blaring of an alarm. It reminded him that he hadn't fixed his yet. In the upscale community, the sound of a house alarm wasn't all that uncommon. Almost all of the houses had them, and people were constantly tripping their own. 2 police cars went roaring by. He could only imagine the red-faced homeowner explaining how they once again forgot to turn it off while they went to raid the fridge. When his dinner arrived, he ate quickly. It wasn't that he had somewhere to be, because he didn't. It was something about the music and the atmosphere that was just a little off tonight. Or was it him? He wasn't sure. He thought about it some more. It was him. He was tired of eating alone. He paid his bill and took a walk back towards his home. To his surprise, the police cars that he had seen earlier were at Fred's house. He slowed down to see what was happening, but the action was all inside. When he arrived back home, he watched out the window until the police cars left. He turned on the television and settled down on the sofa. The doorbell rang a few minutes later. When he opened the door, Fred was standing there. "I got robbed again." "Oh no, what did they take?" Fred stood there a couple of seconds looking at Barry. "Can't say." "Well, did you tell the police?" "They were at my house when I got back home. When I went in, I pretended that they had taken a piece of pottery, like you have on that pedestal." "It was a vase." Fred looked over at the pedestal. "Where's your pot, anyway?" "My vase was broken." "How?" "Can't say." Fred stared at him for a second, but went on. "Anyway, there was a new officer who didn't know me. He wanted to arrest me because he thought I was the one breaking in. The other officer did know me, and he wanted to arrest me because, well, he knew me. He checked out my outstanding warrants, but I had taken care of those already, so he couldn't. It was a rough night." Fred shook his head and then asked, "You have any more of that cake roll?" "Yes, let me go get it." Barry took it out of the refrigerator and cut 2 slices and put them on plates. Getting out 2 glasses, he poured some milk. "Thank you," Fred said as he started eating. He had moved to the table by this point. "No problem." Barry thought for a minute. "How did your alarm go on? I thought you had it shut off." "I had it turned back on." The 2 of them ate the cake for a few minutes, Fred looking up and said, "There are many mysteries in this neighborhood. Broken pots, stolen items, and the lot." "Yes, there are. Do you want another piece?" "No. I have to find the thing that was stolen." "Was it the same thing that was stolen last time?" "Yes and no. It was the paperwork for it. You have a good night." "Sure, Fred. You too." Fred showed himself out, and Barry sat there wondering what was going on. He thought about the girl with the China doll face. What did he know about her? Wanted a battery, was taking a chemistry class, had a gun and a lab partner by the name of Donald. Barry still didn't know what a Rex battery was. Turning the television back on, he listened to the news. There was nothing about a break-in at Fred's house. Bored with the show, he turned it off and sat and watched Fred's house out the window. There seemed to be a lot more going on over there than a television anyway. An hour later, Fred pulled up and carried in what looked like a rifle. Barry shook his head. New money. Chapter 7. Barry woke to the sound of Bob working on the shelves, with drilling and sawing. When Barry went downstairs, Bob was almost done. "Good morning, Mr. Hibbard." Bob was all smiles. "You sleep late." Rosita was almost scolding. "Yes, extra tired." Barry watched Bob work for a few minutes. The man may not know a vase from a pitcher, but he was a maestro with wood. The shelves were built into the corner with curved shelves that went up about waist height. 2 doors covered those up. There was a round glass enclosure with 2 small shelves that were tucked back along the edges. The top of the glass enclosure was topped off with wood. Bob had also installed a light to illuminate the vase. "I took the liberty of putting a slow-rotating plate on the bottom, Mr. Hibbard. I can take it out if you don't like it." "No, Bob, that's perfect." He thought of everything. Barry smiled. The scent of bacon cooking drew Barry into the kitchen. Ava looked up from the stove. I was wondering what happened to you. You didn't eat your dinner last night either. Extra tired. I went to the country club restaurant for dinner. How much eggplant can one person eat? Never enough. She shook her head. Breakfast will be ready shortly. A few minutes later, Rosa, Ava, Bob, and Barry sat at the table enjoying eggs, bacon, and toast with Ava's homemade jam. Barry loved breakfast. It was his favorite meal. I should be done with the shelves early this afternoon. Then I'll start on the window. Barry looked up at Bob. He was between bites. That would be fine. Bob nodded. He had filled his mouth again. Stretching as he stood up, Barry yawned. I'm going to paint the living room and the kitchen. Any ideas about color? A soft green, I think, for the living room. The kitchen can be yellowish cream to match, Ava said. She had an eye for interior design. Yes, I think you're right, Barry said. He looked around. I'm going out to hire a painter. See, Rosa said as she went back to work. All the dust that Bob was creating had to be dealt with. Bob finished his last egg and then started on the shelves again. Life is good, Barry thought. He was finally stepping out from under his father's shadow. He turned to Ava. Why don't you come with me and help me pick out colors? Okay. As they drove out of the garage in the Ferrari, she said, I hate this car. It reminds me of your ex-wife. It feels arrogant. Me too. Maybe we should go car shopping also, he smiled. She laughed. Do you really think a car lot would take this in trade for something of less value? I suppose not. They went to one paint store, then another, before they found the perfect colors. When they were done, Barry had to phone all over town to find a painter to do the project. But even then, he would have to wait a week. It was afternoon before they started heading home. How about I take you to the country club restaurant for lunch, since I kept you out so late? That sounds nice. I've only been there a few times. Your father used to take the staff out for Christmas Eve dinner. He stared at her for a minute. I had no idea he was doing that. Yes, up until he got sick. I have a new respect for the man. He drove up to the building and Ava called her mother. When she put the phone back in her pocket, she said, Bob's still there. The shelves are done, so he started on the window. She's going to cook some lunch, so they're taken care of. Sounds good. As they entered, it felt like a whole different place to Barry. The white tablecloths had been replaced by red plaid ones. The faux candles were gone, and the place wasn't dark and dingy because all the window shades were up, and the sunlight streamed in. Instead of his normal table, the host led them to one right in the middle. After they were seated, they were handed a menu. What am I going to do? They don't have eggplant. You're going to turn into an eggplant. This is the lunch menu, not the dinner one. Try something else. Barry sighed. When the waiter came up, he looked the man over. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and a straight, strong jawline. The man could have been on a Nazi war poster as one of the master race. Barry ordered the chicken fried steak. Ava ordered the double bacon beef burger. As the waiter was writing it all down, Barry looked up and noticed his name tag. Donald. What are the chances? He thought. Tell me, do you normally go by Don? No, I was raised as a Donald. Are you going to school? Yes, just up at the college. I work part-time here, at lunch only. It helps with tuition. Barry pushed further. What classes are you taking this semester? I have a chemistry class and an English one. I'm taking a light load until the fall. Then I'll start in full-time again. And now for the million-dollar question. Have you ever heard of a Rex battery? Donald went wide-eyed and pale. It seemed to Barry that he was even shaking a little. He didn't answer, just walked away. What was that about? Ava asked. I'm trying to find out more information on a new battery type being developed by the college. I was hoping he knew something. I don't think he liked you asking about it. I don't think so either. A few minutes later, another waiter came up. Donald isn't feeling well and had to go home. Are you ready to order? Chapter 8. The vase arrived from Paris the next day. Barry waited until Bob was there to unpack and put it in the glass case enclosure on the shelf. "Wow, that's a nicer picture than you had before, Mr. Hibbard." Barry admired it and even used Bob's turntable feature to slowly spin it around. Ignoring the picture comment, he said, "Yes, I do like this vase better." A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Rosita went and answered it. To Barry's surprise, it was the girl with the china doll face. "Hello. Can I talk to you, in private?" "Sure. Let's go out to the back patio." Barry was nervous. He asked right away when they went out the door, "Are you packing?" "Sorry. The shotgun was never loaded. It was an old gun that my grandfather and I used to shoot trap with. My dad inherited it when Grandpa died, but kept it out in the shed. It rusted out there, and now it doesn't work." Still, it was very scary for me. "Sorry. You wanted to say something?" "I want the battery. Please, can we work something out so I can get it back?" Barry just shook his head. "I don't have your battery. I never did. I don't even know what it looks like. I thought you said Donald stole it." She sat down. A tear gently rolled down her cheek. "I spent months developing it. I spent money I didn't have. I just want it back." He sat down beside her. "What is a Rex battery, anyway?" "It's a reverse axial battery. It has a titanium alloy core that has been pulsed with a large reverse polar electrical charge on one side. The other side is normal. As one side discharges, it charges the other side. Then, when that side is charged and the other side is drained, it reverses the process. The battery charges back and forth for around 6 months. Imagine what it would mean to the world, having a battery that can power a car and run constantly for 6 months. Oil wouldn't matter anymore, natural gas either. We would have clean energy. Smog would go away. It would solve global warming." That would be quite something, not to mention making billions for the inventor. Was that you, by the way? "It was what my father was working on when he was killed. I perfected it and was trying it out on my car. But my car was broken into. I had the paperwork about the battery in the glove compartment. When the thief saw it, he opened up the hood and took the battery too." "So, he has the battery and the paperwork." She heaved a large sigh. "I caught up with the thief. He was caught breaking into someone else's car. I visited him in jail. He told me he had sold the battery to Fred Casper, so I looked up the address, only it was dark and I got the wrong house. Sorry about your urn, by the way. I bumped it. I didn't expect a pedestal in the middle of the room." Vase. It was useless at this point, but he felt he had to try. "Anyway, Donald was at the right house. He stole the battery, and the next night he went back for the paperwork. He said he was going to give them back to me, but someone took them before he could. Then, when he met you at the restaurant, he was sure that you had them, by the way you were talking." Barry leaned back. "I just wanted to know what it was. When I asked him, he took off. I hope he didn't lose his job." "Who cares? I'm not so sure he would have given them to me. It could make someone very rich. Or a lot of someone's. Does he have any idea who could have stolen it?" "Donald thought his roommate had, since he took off right after the battery disappeared. But when he talked to you, he wasn't sure anymore." "It wasn't me. I've never laid eyes on it. I would like to see it someday. It certainly has caused me a lot of trouble." She let out a nervous giggle. "I'm sorry I dragged you into this." Standing up, she walked into the house. "Oh my!" She walked up to the still revolving vase. "It's beautiful." And in a safer place. She looked around the house as if she was seeing it for the first time. "This place is huge." "It was my father's. I just live here." "Lunch is ready. Do you want to invite your guest?" Ava announced. No. I must be going." She leaned over and whispered, "Your wife is beautiful." He whispered back, "That's the cook. I'm no longer married." Smiling, she said, Your cook is beautiful. Yes, she is. And she's engaged to a great guy I haven't met yet. I see. Have a great day. I hope you find what you're looking for. Me too. After she left, Barry went in and sat at the table with Bob, Ava, and Rosa. Who's your friend? Ava asked. She raised her eyebrows. She seems nice. Oh, and as cute as a button. Barry's eyes widened. I forgot to ask her name. Chapter 9. Barry couldn't stand it anymore. Despite having just eaten, he walked down to the country club restaurant to see if he could find Donald. He had to know the girl's name. The place wasn't busy when he arrived. He looked around, but he couldn't see Donald at all. Yes, sir. How many will there be today? The hostess smiled. I'm looking for Donald. I wanted to talk to him for a minute. He had an emergency. I think he went to Spokane. He's gone? Yes, sir. Thank you. Barry headed back up to his house. He stopped at the bottom of his drive and looked down at the city. He could see almost all of it. It was the view he had grown up with, but every once in a while he would stop to admire it. Snob Hill, he thought. The whole town was jealous of what he had, yet he didn't appreciate it. What am I going to do? How am I going to find her? Not knowing what else to do, he walked into the house. Last night's dinner is still in the fridge. You really should eat it soon, or I'll have to throw it out. Mom and I are going shopping for the wedding, so we're leaving early. Have a nice night. Okay, thanks. He waved as they left. Alone again. He sank down heavily into the easy chair and debated about turning on the TV and tuning out the world. Looking outside, he realized it was still daylight. A good day for a drive, he thought. He climbed in the Ferrari and headed down the hill. He hadn't gone too far when he saw the girl again, pushing a bike with a flat tire. Pulling over, he asked, Can I take you somewhere? She looked over. Hi. Scanning his car, she said, You've got no room in that thing for my bike. I don't want to abandon it. Barry thought for a minute. Here, I know what we can do. You drive, and I'll handle the bike. What? I can't drive that. He hopped out of the car and took the handlebars. You don't have a license? I do, but I don't drive stick. No problem. I'll tell you when to pull in the clutch, and we'll even shift the gears for you. By that time, he had her bike on the other side of the car and sat down. She shook her head and got in. He lined her bike up with the car and had one hand in the middle of the steering wheel to guide the bike and the other hand ready to shift. Okay, put in the clutch. When she did, he pushed the gear shifter into first. Now, slowly let off the clutch while you push on the gas. The car chugged forward a couple of times and then stalled. I can't do this, I tell you. No problem. Nobody gets it the first time. Start the car and we'll try again. After 3 tries, she was finally able to get the car moving and headed slowly down the street. Where are we going? To your place to drop off the bike. He smiled to himself, feeling so clever. But then you'll know where I live. Is that a problem? Of course it is. I tried to rob you at gunpoint. Put in the clutch. It's time to shift a second. She did so without stalling. The car did chug a little when she let off the clutch, though. Hey, that wasn't so bad. No, you're getting the hang of it. The bike was wobbling a little, but Barry managed to keep it from hitting the car as they drove. A few minutes later, she pulled in front of a bike shop. They'll fix it for me. Thanks for the ride. He was crestfallen. But I don't even know your name. I know. I like it better that way. He jumped out of the car and started wheeling her bike to the shop. Heaving a big sigh, he said, Will I ever see you again? If you can steal back the battery, I'll come calling. He gave a slight laugh. I guess you'll need a new lab partner now that Donald's gone back to Spokane. Her eyes went wide. Donald's not from Spokane. He's from Seattle. His roommate was from Spokane. He's after the battery. How fast does this car of yours go? Really fast. Just a minute. She pushed her bike inside the shop and then came right back out. Let's go. To Spokane? Yes, we've got to get the battery before Donald does. Chapter 10. What am I doing? Barry asked himself as he watched the Columbia River pass below him. The bridge was wide and surprisingly empty of cars. It was 8 at night, and he was heading east on the freeway. The blonde next to him was asleep. She had conked out just after 15 minutes on the road. He stole a glance over at her as they drove along. She was very pretty. He knew nothing about this girl, her name, her age, or where she was from. Her age? Is she a minor? He looked at her closely. No, I don't think so. I hope not. He could think of a lot of charges that could stem from transporting a minor across state lines. What am I doing? He wondered again. They had left at the spur of the moment. He thought briefly about going home and packing a suitcase, but she was anxious to beat Donald to Spokane. By the time he was east of the mountains, he was starting to nod off. Not only that, but he was hungry and needing to stop. When he pulled off the freeway and slowed down, her head jerked up and she looked around. Are we here yet? Not yet. We're in Kennewick. Spokane is another 2 hours at least. Keep driving then. I'm out of gas, I'm starving, and I'm falling asleep. We aren't going any further tonight. But we have to beat Donald there. Isn't this a bit of a wild goose chase? We're after a Donald, no last name, of course, who has a roommate. We don't know the roommate's name or where he lives, but we have to beat Donald there. It's really hard to cross the finish line first when you don't know where it is. I have half a mind to bag this whole misadventure and start driving home. He felt his face starting to flush. After I get some gas, of course. You can't go back. What about the battery? Don't you want to change the world? No, I had my day planned out. Well, sorta. I know for a fact saving the world wasn't on my list of things to do. She folded her arms and sat back in her seat, scowling. Ignoring her, he pulled into the gas station and filled up. When he sat back down in his car, he asked, Do you see anywhere to eat around here? There's a McDonald's right around the corner, she said in a gruff voice, arms still folded. McDonald's? What do they serve? She sat forward and looked at him. You've never eaten at a McDonald's? I can't say that I have. How about a hamburger? Have you ever had one of those? Yes, of course. My cook makes the best avocado burger you've ever eaten. That would be very true because I've never eaten an avocado burger. I can't think of anything that sounds less appealing right now. That makes us even. You haven't had an avocado burger, and I haven't eaten at McDonald's. Well, it's going to get uneven right now. Pull up to the drive-thru. Stopping at the drive-thru menu board, Barry nearly came out of his skin when someone said through the speaker, May I take your order? Just a minute. He turned to her and asked, What should I order? She leaned over him and talked into the mic. 2 number 1s, and supersize those, please. What do you want to drink? 2 extra-large Cokes. That'll be $12.30 at the second window, please. Second window? Just pull forward. I'll tell you when to stop. The car was so low, it barely cleared the bottom of the window. He had to reach way up to get his food. I've never seen anyone pay at McDonald's with an American Express before. He looked at her for a minute. Should I have not? They took it. I didn't think they would. Shows you what I know. She looked around for a minute. Where's your cup holder? It doesn't have one. Who makes a car without a cup holder? Ferrari. She looked at him and sighed. I'll hold your drink, you drive. This should be enough caffeine to keep you awake for 2 hours. If not, you can have my drink too. We're going to eat in the car? Don't tell me you've never eaten in a car before. Certainly not this one. She started shaking her head. What planet are you from, anyway? He popped it into gear and popped the clutch. A little of the soda spilled on her lap. Hey, watch it. Oops, sorry. he said with a smile. Chapter 11. What now, Princess? Barry said as they drove into Spokane. Princess? You won't tell me your name. What am I supposed to call you? She smiled. Princess works fine. We're here. What's the plan? The 2 sodas had worked. He was wide awake, but in need of a bathroom. Now we figured out where Donald's roommate lives. Not replying, he pulled into a motel. What are you doing? I'm establishing a base of operation while you figure out where we go next. But he didn't wait for the rest of the sentence. He was a man on a mission. He walked into the lobby and found the men's room. He checked in a few minutes later. While talking to the clerk, he watched her out of the lobby window. She was making one phone call after another. She really is quite pretty, he thought. Pretty had come with a cost last time. He sighed and went back outside. Remind me why I'm doing this? To get the Rex battery back. She shook her head. Millions of dollars, remember? Anyway, I called Donald's cell on a pretense of the lab project that's due. He told me his roommate's name. Okay, I said the guy was cute and I wanted to go with him, even though I've never seen the roommate before. I Googled him, and here's the address and his picture. Albert Sweeney. She showed him the phone. Let's go. It's 11 o'clock at night. Nobody is going to answer the door this late. I wasn't planning on using the door. Just drive me over there, and I'll do the rest. That makes me an accomplice. Okay, let's just stake out the place and see what's happening. Right. Nobody's going to notice a bright red Ferrari parked on the street with 2 people in it who are staring in the windows. What do you suggest, then? She folded her arms. I suggest we get a good night's sleep. In the morning, we rent a van, a white one. Nobody notices a white van. We park on the street and scope out the place for a couple of hours. When Albert comes home, we politely ask for the battery back. I don't think that's going to work. I think we try that before we get arrested for burglary. Sighing, she said, Fine. Here's your room key. I couldn't get 2 rooms together, so yours is down a ways from mine. Good night. She looked at the key and then looked at him. There was a crease in her forehead, as if she wanted to ask a question, but didn't. Good night, then. Barry walked into his room. It had pea-green walls and dingy carpet. The bedspread looked as if it had survived World War II, but just barely. What am I doing? He didn't have anything to change into, so he just hopped into bed in his clothes, falling right to sleep. The pounding on the door seemed to rattle the entire room. Barry woke up startled. Sunlight streamed in the window. The pounding continued as he crawled out of bed. He reached the door and opened it. I just saw Donald drive by. Come on, let's go. What? He was still out of it. She grabbed his hand and pulled him out the door. We need to go, now. Let me get some shoes on at least, he protested. He sat back down on the bed. When he went to put the one shoe on, she was already putting the other on for him. Let's go, I said. He followed her out the door. Turn left out of the parking lot. If you hurry, you can still catch him. Sitting down, he stared up at the car and drove off, going a lot faster than the speed limit. There he is. Slow down. Pull in behind him. He's in the white car. I think he's going to notice a Ferrari following him. Oh, you and your Ferrari. You are not as noticeable as you think you are. He pulled in behind, but saw the driver checking the rearview mirror every 2 or 3 seconds. He's seen us. Without warning, the car sped up, took a corner too fast, and nearly slid off the road. Regaining control, he took off down a side street. Right, you're going to outrun a supercar. Barry shook his head and then downshifted. He was soon catching up to the white car again. The white car pulled back onto the main road and then raced out of town, with Barry in hot pursuit. Turning on a country road, the car had to slow down. It drove to the end of the road and kept going cross-country, blazing its own trail through the forest. Barry stopped the car. "What are you doing?" "I have no ground clearance. I can't go through there." "We have to catch him." As she said it, he heard a crash coming from the forest. He didn't make it very far. Getting out of the car, they both followed the tire tracks. After a few minutes, they found it. The car was piled up on a large rock. The driver was nowhere to be seen. She started searching around for the battery. When she didn't see it in the car's interior, she grabbed a large rock to smash the trunk with. "Wait." Barry walked over and pushed a button on the dash, and the trunk popped open. She smiled, dropped the rock, and looked in the trunk. "It's not here." Her shoulders sagged. "Maybe he has it with him." "Too heavy. He couldn't carry it far." "How did you spot him anyway?" "I was down in the lobby drinking coffee while I waited for you to get up. I saw him drive by." "I've certainly had enough excitement for one morning. I'm going shopping to get a change of clothes, and then back to the motel for a shower. I think breakfast might be in order after that." "All you think about is food." "It's a habit of mine. Shall we?" Chapter 12. "Where are you? I was so worried when I arrived and you weren't here." Barry could hear the concern in Ava's voice. "I'm taking a road trip." "Pass the jam, please, honey buns," Princess said loudly. She was trying to get overheard. "Who was that?" Barry hesitated. "I'm at a diner." "Was that the girl I saw you with the other day on the back deck?" "It's not what you think." He didn't know why he said that. Ava would have been happier if it was. "Well, my oh my. Have a good time. Sorry for disturbing you two." The line went dead before he could respond. Putting the phone back in his pocket, he said, "The cook thinks we're having an affair." "Oh, really? I wonder where she got that from." She ate another bite of her English muffin. "Maybe it was you asking for the jam when it was within easy reach, honey buns." "Maybe." He had bought them both a change of clothes and some pajamas. He was feeling good after his shower. She, on the other hand, had been complaining about the delays. "What do we do now that the day is half over?" she asked. "We go to the airport and leave the car at a park and ride. At least there, my car will be somewhat secure, behind a fence. Then, we rent a van in the terminal." "It's only a car. It has 4 tires and an engine like all the other cars around. Only it's really short, like half a car, not a whole one. What's the big deal?" "It's a Ferrari, a supercar." She shrugged. "You just don't understand. Let's go." "I do understand. You love your car like you love your urn." "It's a vase." "Whatever." As they drove to the airport, he kept looking around at all the cars. They had 4 tires and an engine, like she said. What's so special about this one, except for the price? His father would be turning over in his grave if he knew that his son was thinking like that. He drove around and found the park and ride with the highest fence, then drove in. The shuttle took the 2 of them to the airport. "We should have flown," he said, breaking the silence. She was still pouting about the delay and not talking at all. "I'm not made of money like you are. What do you do for a living anyway?" "Nothing, really. My dad left me more money than I've been able to spend. I live on that." "Lucky." He walked up to the rent-a-car counter. "I need a van, a white one." "I don't have any," the clerk replied. "But I thought you had all sorts of cars." "I only have one van, and it's always rented out for some reason. It isn't due back for 5 days. I have a nice SUV that you can pretend is a van if you use your imagination." Barry didn't know what to say. The guy was being disrespectful, he thought. Everyone seemed to know him in Longview, but this town was different. "I need an SUV then, a white one." "I don't have any white ones. Not a lot of people want to rent that color. I do have a nice light gray one. If you use your imagination, you can pretend it's white." "I don't have an imagination," Barry bellowed. Light gray will work just fine, won't it, honey? He gets like this after a long flight. 12 hours on a plane from Paris. Honey, give me your charge card and go sit down over there. I'll finish up here. She smiled at him. It didn't help. He still stormed off. He sat across the lobby waiting for her to finish. When she did, she handed him the car keys. What's wrong with you? You have no people skills whatsoever. Were you raised in a barn? No, not a barn. All private schools. The best education money can buy. I dropped out of college when my father passed away. You didn't tell me your name was Barry. I don't know if I like hanging out with someone with that name. So Donald is better? He grabbed his card back. And what's your name, Broomhilda? Let's stick with Princess, okay? Chapter 13. They drove by Albert's house and noticed the front door was open. At her urging, he stopped. She went up and knocked on the door. There was no answer. I'm going in. You can't go in. It's not your house. It isn't breaking or entering if the front door is open, she said as she stepped in. A few minutes later, she came back out. Albert Sweeney isn't home. What now? I don't know. The house is completely empty. Not a chair or even a toothbrush. Are you sure you have the right address? She checked her phone again. Yes. I'm going to go talk to the neighbors. Getting up, she walked to the nearest door. After talking to 2 or 3 people on the block, she came back. He doesn't live here, but he uses the address. They have people all the time asking about him. Dead end then. Let's go home. No, not yet. I want to go to the mall. Everyone eventually ends up at the mall. I don't think so. I never go to the mall. She ignored the comment. We can eat at the food court. The what? You really do need to get out more. The mall was a huge, multi-story affair with large skylights over the tables at the food court. Barry looked around at the many options. Well, Princess, is there anywhere to eat where the food doesn't come wrapped in paper? Perhaps you want fine china with Grey Poupon mustard. Grey Poupon? Heavens no, I don't like the stuff at all. A real plate would be wonderful, though. Maybe even non-plastic silverware. Why do people even come to these places? Because it's cheap and fast. Pick a place, grab some food, and I'll meet you here in the middle. Barry walked around for 5 minutes before deciding on the taco place. Ava was excellent at Mexican food, something his father never let her cook. But Barry did, and he loved it. Grabbing his bag, he sat down next to Princess. She had a couple of slices of pizza. She smiled. That looks adventurous. Not really. My cook makes something similar to this, except completely different. He picked at the meat with his fork. It's ground beef. Of course it is. What did you expect? Ava always uses shredded beef and then has it marinating overnight in the fridge. Just eat it. It won't kill you, I promise. He took a bite of the taco. Waiting until his mouth was empty, he said, This isn't bad. Wow, I'll unsnob you yet. Unsnob me? That isn't even a word. What does that mean, anyway? She didn't answer, as her attention was turned to someone walking across the food court. Donald? Barry watched Donald's shock at seeing her in Spokane. Anna? Anna, so that's your name. Hush, she snapped as she stood up. Donald walked up to her. What are you and your rich boyfriend doing here? He's not my boyfriend. Why would he come all the way from Snob Hill with you if you weren't? Good question, Barry replied. I've been asking myself that the whole time. I want my battery. She was staring Donald down. I don't have it. Albert stole it, so I went and broke into his house. But it's only a front. He's never actually lived there. I called him. He's going to meet me in a back alley to discuss the situation. Why are you even involved? It's my battery, she demanded. I have to destroy it. It will cause a cataclysmic catastrophe to all the men and boys across the world. Imagine, no internal combustion engines. It would be the end of the muscle car, hot rods, sports cars, and even supercars. You might as well neuter the entire male population all in one fell swoop. What? Are you crazy? No, I can't let you go through with it. That's why I stole it out of that snob's house at the country club. I had to go back to get the paperwork the next day so that no one could start over and build another one. I even broke into Albert's house, but it was empty. It's my battery. You shouldn't have touched it. I will be hailed a hero if I can complete my mission. Her voice became deep and angry. You will leave my battery alone, or I will tell the police what you've done. You won't be a hero in prison, just Bubba's Chewbone. Where and when is this meeting? This is interesting, Barry thought. She didn't mention her adventures with breaking the same laws he did. You wouldn't turn me in, really? Would you? In a second. Tell me about this meeting. Donald looked crestfallen. He let out a huge sigh and spilled the beans to her. That's better, she said. Oh, and sorry about your car. My car? My car's fine. What are you talking about? I thought you wrecked it in the woods. No, I didn't. Never mind then. Her brow furrowed in puzzlement as she sat back down. You going to be back in time for Chem Lab? He asked. I'll be there. Bye. I would say good luck with your battery, but I hope you fail. It was a parting shot. Donald didn't wait for an answer. He just walked away. That man, she folded her arms. How dare he try to destroy my battery? Oh, I told you everyone goes to the mall, by the way. I was right. He snorted. That wasn't Albert. That was Donald. We were waiting here for Albert. Also, now I'm wondering who it was we chased into the woods yesterday. She looked up as it dawned on her. Oh no. Chapter 14. In the morning, Barry walked down and bought a newspaper out of the machine. His jaw dropped when he saw the headlines. Running upstairs, he knocked on Anna's door. She was in her pajamas and blurry-eyed when she opened up. What? She demanded. See, I told you he would notice the car. He shoved the paper towards her. Local burglar smashes his car into a tree. Not the headline, the part about how he thought a new, fast red police car was chasing him. She grabbed the paper from him and started to read. They're looking for your car, as in the police. It's good that it's still in the airport. What time is this rendezvous with Albert? 7 tonight. I'm finally going to get my battery back. Good. Then we can go home? I'm tired of eating food out of paper sacks when I'm paying a cook every day who isn't cooking. Yes, of course. We'll set out right away after that. Good. Speaking of food, let's get something to eat. Somewhere that has real plates and silverware. You really have to get over your need for fine cuisine. The rest of the world isn't like that. He shook his head. Get dressed. I'll pick the restaurant. The restaurant had fine china and tablecloths. Barry was all smiles as the host led them to the table. After sitting down, he said, This is more like it. She looked around. A little overkill, don't you think? All this for a couple of flapjacks and a scramble? Oh, I don't think they have those things here. What? She grabbed a menu and began reading. What is this stuff? Savory French toast with spinach? A pie with hash brown, cheese, and eggs? Egg Benedict? This isn't food. It is food. Good food. Try the croissant with egg and blue cheese. No thanks. The stuffed French toast doesn't look too awful. I'll try that. This is better than McDonald's. I grew up eating at McDonald's. It's what I'm used to. Why would you settle for that when there's so much better out there? Her face turned red. Listen, buddy, Barry, whatever your name is. There are a lot of us out there, the majority of us, who weren't born with a silver spoon sticking out of their mouths. Those of us who have to work hard, scrimped and saved for a college education. Fast food represents a cheap meal that we don't have to cook. Okay, I didn't mean to upset you. Let's just enjoy the rest of the date. She looked at him sideways. Date? Yes, with the stop at McDonald's and the trip out over here, we've been dating quite a bit. McDonald's isn't a date. I thought you said, she cut him off. We haven't been dating. What do you call two people going to dinner then? 3 meals a day, by the way. She sat there in silence for a long moment. Let's not get distracted. We're here to get the battery. Okay, we'll focus on the battery. After breakfast, she insisted on going to the local library to use the internet. She had a homework assignment to finish up. He busied himself in the periodical section. He wondered why he hadn't gone back to school after his father's death. Maybe it was the inheritance, maybe the depression. He didn't know. He had married too soon after the passing. It had been a mistake. He liked this girl. He hadn't thought about any women in a long time. His thoughts were interrupted when she walked over to him. Done. Where should we go now? We have 7 hours to kill. How about a lunch date? Everything's a date with you. How can you even think about lunch after that huge breakfast you ate? He sighed. It was the normal amount. You must be feeding a tapeworm then. I am not. He was indignant. How about if we go shopping at that mall we were at earlier? I can go shopping and you can feed that face of yours. He thought about it for a couple of seconds and then reluctantly agreed, even though he hated the idea of another meal wrapped in paper. Chapter 15. Night had fallen by the time they were to meet with Albert. The place was a back alley behind a shopping mall. All sorts of red flags were raised in Barry's mind, but Anna didn't seem bothered by it. Albert wasn't there when they parked the car, so they waited. Soon, there were approaching headlights coming towards the driver's side of the rent-a-car. Barry started to get out. Anna had already opened her door when a gun was pointed out the window of the approaching car. Get down, Barry yelled as he jumped over the hood. He grabbed Anna around the midsection, and they both went sprawling across the ground. Shots rang out, striking the SUV and the wall behind them. What are you doing? Anna shouted. Saving you. I don't need saving. She stood up and pulled out a pistol. She emptied her whole magazine. The bullets thudded against the car, glass broke, and holes appeared in the hood. Tires screeched as it retreated. It spun around and took off the way it came. Come on, Anna said, getting into the rental. I hit the radiator. All we need to do is follow the trail of fluid on the pavement. You have a gun? Come on, she screamed. Barry rushed into the car and took off after the other vehicle. You have a gun, he repeated. Yes, I have a bra holster just for occasions like this. How many occasions like this have there been? This is the first. I thought you said you weren't packing. No, I said the shotgun didn't work. By this time, Barry raced down the city streets. The car they were pursuing slowed down. Steam billowed up from the hood. The car pulled over, and a man stepped out, pointing a gun at them. Barry ducked down below the dash as he slammed on the brakes. Anna pointed her gun at the man when she jumped out. Neither one of them got a shot off, because police cars came at them from every direction. Drop your weapons, an officer commanded. Both Anna and the gunman complied. Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Both of them laid down prone. Barry slowly opened the door and crawled out. He laid on the ground too. His heart was racing as the lights and blaring sirens circled him. Barry felt a knee on his back, and his arms were yanked behind him. He was handcuffed. Pulling him off the ground, 2 officers forced him spread eagle across the hood of a car. Then his pockets were emptied out. Soon, all three of them were sitting in the back of different police cars. Nobody was talking to him, as the officers were more interested in talking to the two with guns, Anna and Albert. Barry sat there watching the lights from the police car flash across the sky. After an hour, the lights started to go out as the police cars started to disperse. An officer sat down behind the wheel in Barry's car and, without a word, drove off to the station. When they arrived there, Barry was taken out of the back of the car and put into an interview room. He waited at least a half an hour before someone finally came in. "I'm Detective Reynolds. Glad to meet you, Mr. Hibbard." He put out his hand to shake Barry's, but then realized that Barry was still handcuffed. "Oh, sorry. Let me take those off you." Barry instinctively rubbed his red and swollen wrists. "Mr. Hibbard, you've had quite a night." "Tell me about it." "Let's start from the beginning. What happened to you?" "Am I under arrest?" "No, I just have to ask you some questions." Barry took a deep breath and said, "We were supposed to meet a guy named Albert to get Anna's battery back. When we arrived at the meeting place, Albert opened up on us. Anna returned fire, and I was just stuck in the middle like a sitting duck. That's about it." "Why were you chasing the other car when you knew the guy had a gun?" Anna insisted. "I see." The detective was writing things down. "The whole thing was witnessed by a man taking out trash at the Chinese restaurant. He pretty well confirms what you just told me. We will need you to testify against Albert if the case goes to trial, but for right now, you're free to go." "Thank you." Barry stood up and opened the door. When he walked down the hall, he saw Anna talking to the police officer. "Ruger LC9. That's a nice gun." "Yes, it's small enough to not show when I have it in my bra holster." "Well, here's your gun and your concealed carry permit back. Take care not to get into any more trouble tonight." "Thank you, Jim. It was nice meeting you." She turned when she saw Barry. "Oh, hi. You ready to go?" "Jim? You're on a first-name basis with the Spokane police?" "He's a single guy. Besides, he looks really handsome in that uniform. What's wrong with that?" Barry shook his head. "Wait, are you jealous?" "No. You are too. You just won't admit it. I'm not jealous, but I'm ready to go home." "Can't." "What do you mean, can't?" "I don't have the battery. I need to talk to Albert in the morning. I need to know what he's done with it." Barry let out a large sigh. Chapter 16. The first thing that Barry did that morning was run downstairs to get a newspaper. For the second day in a row, there had been an article about him. Shootout in back alley leads to 3 arrests. At least the article stated that 2 of the participants had been released. They didn't mention any names, pending further investigation. Barry almost wished that they had. At least he would be able to find out what Anna's last name was. He walked back up the stairs and knocked on Anna's door. She opened up and yawned. She was in her pajamas he had bought for her. "We're in the newspaper again." She looked at the article. At least they didn't use the mugshots. "I'm starving. When's breakfast?" Barry shook his head. He was feeling a lot of stress over the events of the day before, but he pushed that aside. "Get dressed. I'll bring the car around." She talked him into going to a diner this time. They sat at the counter and talked to the waitress while they watched the cook make their food. Eggs, bacon, and hash browns. Now this is breakfast. Not that foo-foo stuff we had yesterday, she smiled. He barely touched his breakfast. "You're not the least bit upset over all this, are you?" "Breakfast? No, the car chases, shootouts, being arrested and all. Of course, it's going to be quite the story to tell the kids when I get older." He turned back to his breakfast and pushed his hash browns around the plate a little more before giving up. He couldn't brush it aside as easily as she seemed able to do. Dropping Anna off at the jail in the morning, Barry drove down to turn in the rental car. The place was busy with cars and trucks being checked in and out. When he pulled up to the attendant, the man took one look at the SUV. "Are those bullet holes?" Barry stepped out and looked at the side of the vehicle. "Yes, I believe they are." He hadn't realized what a close call the shootout had been until that moment. "Sir, are you okay?" Concern was written on the attendant's face. "No, I'm not," Barry replied. All the stress of the day before came flooding back. The shootout, being arrested, the jail. He started shaking. It was all too much. The next thing he knew, the attendant was leading him to a chair. "Sit here for a moment until you get some color back. You look terrible." Feeling dizzy, Barry sat there. It seemed like the parking lot was spinning around. When he finally got his wits, he looked up and saw another man standing in front of him. It was a tall man with an employee badge from the rental agency. "Sir, I'm going to have to report the bullet holes to the police. Also, you are liable for the damages to the car." "The police know, so don't waste your time. I just didn't think the bullets hit so close. Sorry." "What happened?" "A man tried to kill us. It's all in the paper." Barry looked back at the car. "My head was right there. He only missed me by an inch." "I see. What about the damages?" "You have my contact information. Tell me how much and I'll send you a check." "Yes, sir. I need you to sign here." Barry didn't bother to look at the piece of paper. He was sure he knew what it was. He scrawled his signature across it. "Thank you, sir." Getting his nerve back up, he headed to the park and ride to retrieve his car. Anna was standing in front of the police station when he drove up. She hopped in without a word. "Well," he asked, "what did our friend Albert have to say?" "He wasn't even a college student. He's an imposter. His job was to steal the battery. How he found out about it, I don't know. This company, Arizona Interstate Mining, hired him to get it from me." "Why did he try to kill us?" "He thought that you were Donald when you stepped out of the car. He just wanted to scare you away. He wasn't trying to kill you. An inch is all he missed me by." "That's what he said anyway." "I don't believe it. So, what did he do with the battery?" "He gave it to his contact at the AIM. It's some type of shell company. He said they've probably destroyed it already, along with the plans." Tears were forming in her eyes. It was time to change the subject. "So, is it time to go home yet?" "Yes. Let's get out of here. I don't like this town." Chapter 17. She turned me down. It was his first thought as he climbed out of his oversoft bed. It was nice to be home, but he was still stunned by the happenings of the previous 2 days. How could she turn me down? She wants to be rich. I'm rich. He studied himself in the mirror. Good looking, too, I'm told. His hair was sticking out in all directions after tossing and turning all night. Black hair, blue eyes, women like that. So why did she turn me down? He thought back on the ride home. They had stopped at some roadside diner, the type of place that she liked to eat. He hadn't even complained overly much about the greasy food and the lack of atmosphere. At the right moment, he looked her in the eyes and said, "I've never dated anyone this much in a 3-day period. I'm really falling for you." Thousands of women in the world would have loved me to say that to them. He shook his head. "You don't know anything about me. You don't even know my last name." "No worries. I was planning on changing your last name anyway." He thought he was both quick-witted and clever. "Oh, Barry, you're such a romantic," she said in a syrupy sweet voice while battering her eyelashes at him. Then her face darkened. "Not." It was the last word she said to him for the rest of the way home. He had tried several times to start up a conversation to no avail. When he dropped her off in the middle of the night where she had left her bike, she rode away. She didn't leave her phone number. She didn't thank him for interrupting his life. She just rode away. Barry brushed his hair and teeth, then went downstairs. Ava was already there, and breakfast was on the stove. "Good morning, Romeo. How was your trip?" "I got dumped." Tears dropped from his eyes. He was only able to stop himself before he started bawling. "Oh no, you're having such a rough year." She turned off the stove and walked over to hug him. Rosita heard the commotion and came around the corner. "Problemo?" Barry's girlfriend broke up with him. Oh dear, oh dear." Rosita hugged him too. "It's okay. It doesn't matter," he reassured them. It did too matter, he thought. "I'll fix you a cake roll. That will cheer you up." Ava went back into the kitchen, dished up his breakfast, and then started mixing the cake. "Thank you so much." Rosita patted his shoulder and then went back to work. As he ate, Barry contemplated what he could do next. He wanted her back, if he even had her in the first place. All she was interested in was his car for fast transportation. Nearly getting killed, and all those dates hadn't impressed her at all. The battery, he thought. Get the battery. Get the girl. He pulled out his phone and flipped through the contacts until he came to John Adams. He hit call. "Yes, Barry, how are you doing today?" "I've got a couple of matters I need to discuss with you. When can you come over?" "I can swing by after work. What's this about?" "I seem to have damaged a rental car, and I need to talk to you about a business matter." "All right, see you in a few hours." John Adams was the corporate lawyer who ran Barry's father's business affairs. He was good at what he did, and if anyone could help Barry, it was John. Barry sat back and smiled. Get the battery, get the girl. Why didn't I think about that earlier? When the cake roll was done, Barry was all smiles. Ava gave him a sideways glance. "See, it's helping already." "Yes, it is," Barry replied. He ran upstairs and turned on his computer. He did a lot of searching, but didn't find any reference to Arizona Interstate Mining except a brief article about them being part of the Vadum conglomerate. He then researched Vadum, but there were only a few articles on it. One of them claimed it was a shadow organization, very secret and very private. When he heard the doorbell, Barry ran downstairs. Rosita was just letting John in. "Come out to the back patio. I need to talk to you in private," Barry said. "All right." When they sat down out there, Barry asked, "Have you ever heard of the Arizona Interstate Mining Company?" John scratched his head. "No, I can't say that I have. I usually know most of the viable businesses around. Is it small?" "I don't know. How about Vadum Corporation?" John's eyes opened slightly. "Stay away from them. They don't play nice." "What do they do?" "Rumor has it, but of course it can't be proven, they were the enforcer of the big three automakers, the strong arm as it were. Long ago, the automakers cut them loose, but I think they still call on them when they need a favor." If there was a product that could get the world independent of oil and they had that technology, what would they do with it? I'm talking about something called a Rex battery that only needs to be recharged every 6 months. The world is pumping oil faster than the dinosaurs are decaying and creating it. Sooner or later, it's all going to come to a screeching halt. They would sit on the technology until they needed it. "Thank you. You have been most helpful." Barry stood up and shook his hand. "I'm only glad I could help. Do you need me to do anything else?" "Not this time." Chapter 18. Barry didn't know how to start the phone conversation, so he just let his tongue run wild and tactless. "Hello? My name is Barry. I called around town to find out who the shadiest private eye around was, and your name kept coming up." There was a silence on the other end of the line. Barry wondered if the man had hung up. "Hello? I would never do anything shady, of course, but let's meet and I could direct you in the right direction. I may be able to recommend someone that doesn't have the stellar ethics that I do." Barry was taken aback by the response. Oh, okay, sure. The coffee shop by the college? No, that's a little busy these days. How about that Persian restaurant next door? Nobody eats there anymore. Sure, I thought it closed. No, I'm sure it'll be open. Just knock. Okay, 2 o'clock? I'll be there. When Barry arrived, he tried the front door, but it was locked. The place didn't look like it was still in operation. He started to walk away, but as he did, the side door to the building opened. Hey, buddy, over here. A man in a cheap suit and a fedora hat motioned to him from the doorway. Are you Carney Smith? Come on. He motioned again. Barry followed him into the building, and the door closed behind him. Yeah, I'm Carney. I can't say anything over the phone. It's being monitored. I was hired by the wife of the district attorney at the time to track him. I found him in numerous compromising positions with various women. He's still mad and is trying to make my life miserable, forcing me to leave town. Carney flipped the lights on, revealing worn, crushed velvet chairs and dingy red carpeting. The place was old and dated. Can I get you something to eat? I have a couple of steaks in the freezer. Sure, Barry replied as he followed Carney into the kitchen. The lights came on, revealing several cook stoves and a couple of freezers. The old man gave this place to me when he retired. It was the town diner, and I should have kept it going, but I had to live the glamour life of the private eye. Only, it wasn't so glamorous. It's digging through people's trash and staking out their houses. Sitting for hours on end, waiting for them to do something stupid, so you can have it on film. Digital nowadays. He fired the cook stove up and grabbed 2 steaks out of the freezer. I rented the place out to an Iranian couple, and things went well for them, until it became not politically correct to have any relations with anyone from Iran. What a stupid thing that was. Now I just need to get the money up to renovate this place. How much will that take? 100 grand, I figure. I'm halfway there. Several more big jobs, and I'll have it. Speaking of jobs, what do you have for me? A friend of mine had something stolen from them. A shell company has it. I'm trying to get it back. Can you help me? Yes and no. I can find the corporation, find out what and where they're hiding. But I'm not so good at the breaking and entering part. You need to hire someone to do that separately. Barry smiled. No problem. I know just the guy. He's already involved, too. Good. Give me the info, and I'll get started. As Barry wrote it down, Carney put the steaks on the grill. He chopped up onions and squash, adding them to the grill, too. Soon, he was taking down plates from the cupboard and putting food on them. Here we go. I hope you're hungry. Barry wasn't. Ava had fixed him lunch before he left, but he ate anyway. Wow, this is amazing. Where did you learn to cook? Right here. Dad owned the place outright. I worked here every day while I was going to high school and college. He hung up his apron when I graduated. I guess he figured that I would take it over, but I swore I'd never step inside another kitchen. I've lived to regret that decision. Try your vegetables. It's a secret family recipe. Very tasty. I love them. Barry cleared his plate. He ate too much, but there was always room for good food. Now, down to business. I charge $75 an hour, plus expenses. I will find your company and where the stolen item is, but you're going to have to get your guy to steal it back. It's a deal. Barry handed him a piece of paper. Here's the information. Carney read it over. Battery, huh? Seems like a lot of work for a battery. It's a very powerful battery, one that can revolutionize the world. I see. Chapter 19. The next day, Barry took Ava to lunch again at the country club restaurant. It was not so much that he wanted to be with Ava, but he was hoping to catch Donald there. He wasn't disappointed. He made sure the hostess sat them down at one of Donald's tables. When Donald came up with his order pad, he gazed at Barry and said, "Not you again. Can't you just leave me alone?" "I'd like the crab cakes, and she would like the smoked turkey sandwich." Donald eyed him dubiously. After an awkward silence, he finally said, "Can I bring you anything to drink?" "Yes. 2 Cokes, please. Oh, and I'll need your help recovering a stolen item." Ava's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "He knows." Donald folded his arms. "If I help you, I will be destroying all the hopes and dreams of all young men everywhere who ever wanted or ever will want a muscle car. A complete destruction to the life that we all once hoped for, but will never achieve." Barry wrote $5,000 on a napkin and held it up so that only Donald could see it. "For that much, I can spoil a few dreams. Give me your email address and we can work something out." "Great," Barry replied, and wrote the address under the amount and handed it to Donald. He took it. "I'll bring those drinks right away." "What's going on?" Ava asked. "I need him to help me get the girl back. He doesn't want to, but he's definitely the man for the job." "How's he going to do that?" "She lost something very valuable to her. If I get it back for her, she'll love me again." "All this mystery. Still, it's better than moping around the house. I haven't seen you this motivated in a long time." "Thank you," Barry smiled. He knew she wouldn't be so happy with him if she knew what he was up to. Donald brought them their meal. While Ava and he ate, they sat and chatted about the old times growing up and all the trouble they got into as kids. She was always the servant's daughter, so she served as the scapegoat as far as Barry's parents were concerned. But they both knew better. When the old cook retired, it was Barry who talked his dad into hiring her. Donald brought the check, and Barry put it on his charge card, including a $500 tip. It was to get Donald's attention and let him know he was serious. He made sure Ava didn't see the receipt. The next afternoon, Barry, Carney, and Donald met together at the Persian restaurant. They sat down in one of the old booths, and Carney pulled out a notebook. "Here's what I've learned so far," Carney said as he opened it. "Arizona Interstate Mining is just an empty storefront in Mesa, a town next to Phoenix. I had a friend of mine do a run by there, and here's a picture that he emailed me. From what he found out from the businesses around there, somebody comes in and checks the mail twice a week. There is no way they store anything valuable there. The other place that you mention is Vadum Incorporated. These guys are bad juju. They have a large storage facility in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's right by the airport. We're talking armed guards and video surveillance. I don't know if your guy can get in there." Barry turned to Donald, but before he could say anything, Donald replied, "You'd be amazed what I can do for $5,000. We need schedules of the guards and camera positions if possible. We need to find out where they have the battery," Barry said. He swallowed hard. This was going to be much harder than he thought. Still, if Donald was willing, he would let him go in. "I'm on it. I need to be on site for a week or two, though." Barry nodded. "I'll come with you. We'll send for Donald here when we are sure we can do this." "It's settled then," Carney replied. "You need to carry on with your normal schedule, Donald, until we send for you. Not a word to anyone about what we're doing, not even Anna." "She's the last person I'd tell. She's barely talking to me as it is." Chapter 20. The Vadum office was a one-story building with a flat roof. There were lights on every corner. 20 feet from the walls was a 10-foot-high chain-link fence with barbed wire on top. It surrounded the entire building. Guards with guns could be seen walking around the grounds. Barry and Carney lay prone on a small rising above the facility, looking down on it through the darkness with binoculars. "It seems like a lot of trouble to go through for a battery," Carney said. "I see 5 guards in front, and I don't know how many are on the sides." Why on earth would they have that much security? It doesn't look like a friendly place. Should we call Donald and abort the mission? No. The future of mankind is at stake. Carney swung his head towards Barry. Really? No, but I want the battery. I'm not ready to give up yet. What can we do? Carney shook his head. I suppose every secured area has its weak spot. Achilles' heel, so to speak. We'll have to find it, but is it worth it? Up to a certain point. Let's at least try to find a way in. It's your dime. They both crawled down the backside of the hill and then stood up, walking to the rental car. They drove without their lights on until they were out of the area, then headed down the road into town. It was late. Barry told Carney good night and went to his hotel room. After changing out of his dirty clothes, he headed to the shower. A knocking on the door woke Barry. He grabbed some clothes and then opened up. Carney was standing there. I'm going to meet with a contractor that worked on the Vadum building. Do you want to come? Of course. Let me finish getting dressed. When he was finished, he hopped in the car with Carney. They arrived at a brick front office and made their way in. Norm Giles was behind the desk when the two approached. Norm looked up from his paperwork. Hello, Carney. It's good to see you again. What can I do for you? I heard you were one of the contractors for the Vadum building by the airport. Norm's eyes darkened. I don't ever want to do anything with those people again. We're just hoping to get a floor plan of the building, Carney replied. Why would you need a floor plan? I'm investigating them for illegal activity. Norm smiled. You're going to break in, aren't you? Both Carney and Barry held their collective breaths. I will assist you in any way I can. Norm stood up and went to the file cabinet. Those people demanded all our plans back after we finished our work. Of course, we didn't comply. They still haven't paid our last 2 payments, and it's been over a year. They're all creepy-like. The ones that work there, that is. Flipping through the files, he said, number 93. He then went over to a set of skinny drawers. He found the one labeled 93 and opened it. He pulled out a set of plans. Barry was still a little upset at being figured out. He wished he would have thought it through and had a reasonable explanation ready for why they were wanting the plans. He thought Carney, who did this sort of thing for a living, would have been ready. He'd been just as surprised as Barry had been by Norm's sudden accusation. The place is built like a box, 4 sides with the halls along the edge of the building and a vault in the middle. It's like one big safe, extremely well guarded. They have 2 guards per corner, inside and out. At least, that's what they had when I was doing the work for them. Those guards watched my every move like a hawk. Say that we just wanted to peek in and look around. How would we go about that? Not that you would break in, of course. If I were going to do that, and I wouldn't because it's too well guarded, but if I were insane and tried, I would go through the wiring access tunnel. All the wiring is underground. There's a tunnel that leads up to the building. That would be the only other way in. The problem there is the wires go into a 6-inch conduit when it enters the building. There is an access hatch for personnel near that, but you would come up in the middle of that hallway and you would be exposed to at least 4 guards, not to mention a multitude of security cameras. Barry was looking at the blueprints. What if we cut power? 2 problems. It would be very dark, and the vault is activated by an electrical thumbprint device that requires power. In other words, it can't be done, Carney put it to the point. I didn't say that, and I'd love to see someone try. All I'm saying is that it would be a very hard egg to crack. Can we borrow the plans for a couple of days? No. But I can make you your own set. Come back in a couple of hours and I'll have them all done for you. Chapter 21. Carney and Barry pored over the floor plans for several days. They bounced ideas off each other and finally thought they had the whole thing figured out. It was time to phone Donald. Barry chartered a private plane to bring him to Santa Fe. The airport was not easy to get to, as most commercial flights stop at Albuquerque. Waiting at the airport for the plane to arrive, Barry was in the passenger seat, looking over the plan one more time. They would let Donald rest from the trip and then go in the next night at 2 in the morning. He wanted to make sure that Donald would have an easy time of it, so he checked and double-checked everything. Smiling to himself, he knew it could work. The only unknown was the safe room. They didn't know if their plan to bypass the lock would work. If worst came to worst, Donald could pick it. If anyone could, it was him. The two of them watched as the plane landed and taxied over to the terminal. The door opened, and they climbed out of the car and made their way to the base of the stairs as they rolled out. Donald was the first one out. Dragging his suitcase, he descended the stairs. When he passed Barry, he said, "Sorry." Barry was about to ask him what he was sorry for, but then Anna came out and ran down the stairs, giving Barry a huge hug. "You're getting my battery back. I love you." She smacked him right on the lips. "What's she doing here? I thought we told you not to tell anyone." Kearney was red-faced. "She yelled at me every day for losing the battery. I finally told her to stop and that we were going to steal it back. She demanded to come along, and I figured, why not? It's her battery." "Don't try to figure anything anymore. You're not qualified to do that. Leave the thinking to those who can." Turning to Barry, Kearney said, "Disentangle yourself. We have work to do." Barry was enjoying the hug, but he didn't like the fact that she had said she had linked her feelings for him with his getting the battery back. He thought back to his ill-conceived plan. Get the battery, get the girl. "We've got to go," he finally said. "Wait, I've got to get my bag." She ran up the stairs into the plane and brought back a red suitcase. They had packed the luggage in the trunk of the car and headed to the hotel. "So, what's the plan? When are we going in?" she asked. Her voice was higher pitched than usual because of the excitement. "You're not going in," Kearney said flatly. "What do you mean? I'm not going in? Who are you anyway?" "I'm the one that's running this operation, and I say we go as originally planned. That means you're not going in." "We'll see about that." She folded her arms and sat back in the seat. Barry kept quiet. He was plotting in his mind what his next step was. When they arrived at the motel, he walked over to the office. Coming back, he announced, "I just got a room for you, Anna. It's on the first floor, and the rest of us are on the second. Donald, your room is upstairs between Kearney's and mine. We need to meet and go over the plan. Tonight, we rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." As Donald and Anna hauled their suitcases to the rooms, she stopped to ask, "Can I listen to the plan at least? Please?" The question was directed at Kearney. He looked over at Barry, but Barry just shrugged. So Kearney said, "I guess. But don't think for 1 second you're going to participate in any way, shape, or form." She smiled. "Thank you." Kearney shook his head. "So, now it all makes sense. The reason we're risking life and liberty to retrieve a battery. It's all about a girl. I have half a mind to pull the plug on this project right now." "I can make your restaurant a reality. You won't have to do any more jobs. We can partner up. What do you say?" Kearney thought about it for a minute. "My recipes? I run it how I want?" "I'm just the financier. The day-to-day operations will be all you." A big grin crossed Kearney's lips. "I suddenly love batteries. It's a deal." They shook on it. Chapter 22. It was the middle of the night when the vehicle pulled up to the electrical vault. This time, Barry was able to rent a white van, and Kearney had managed to acquire some stickers with a utility logo on it. When Kearney parked the van, everyone hopped out. Barry and Kearney were in yellow vests with a utility logo on it, but Donald and Anna were dressed in black clothes, with their face darkened. Donald and Barry pulled the cover off the box, and Donald climbed down. Barry handed him a long, black electrical cord as wide as his wrist. Anna crawled over the hill and up next to the fence. It was up to Donald to push the cord in as far down the tunnel as he could. It was narrow, not big enough to crawl through. Barry watched as he threaded the cord through the opening. When he had it as far as it would go, he gave Barry the thumbs up and climbed back out of the vault. Putting on the pack, he said, "Ready." "Step 2, Barry said. "Get to the fence." Donald crawled over the hill and was soon sitting next to Anna. They both had wire cutters. "Here goes," Carney said, and he pushed a button on the other end of the long black cord. There was a low rumble. The lights of the Vadum building went out. Wasting no time, Donald and Anna started cutting the fence. When they had a small hole, they both crawled through. "That wasn't the plan. She's not supposed to go. Just Donald." Carney put his hands on his hips. Barry watched helplessly as the two of them neared the building. There was a flash, followed by lots of smoke, which billowed up around the walls. "Nothing to do but wait," Barry sighed. "She's not supposed to be in there." It was pointless to repeat, but Carney did anyway. It was a complex plan. Shut off the power, then Donald goes in, lights off the smoke bomb, and picks the lock on the front door in the confusion. Figuring out what type of safe was in the building was the hard part. But they had found out what type of thumbprint device the building had. All Donald had to do was unhook the wires and then hook them up to the battery-powered thumbprint device with his hand programmed into it. That would open the door to the safe. Finding the wreck's battery and getting back out would be the hard part. They stared at the billowing smoke. They didn't notice the men coming up behind them until it was too late. "Hands up." Turning, they saw 3 guns pointing at them, and both shot up their hands. Barry sighed. Things were not going to plan. "You guys work late," one of the gun holders said. "Emergency power outage, priority 1. Barry tried to sound convincing. "I don't think so. Follow us." The man motioned him towards the building. "My boss isn't going to be happy about this," Carney said. It sounded lame. They both started walking. As they neared the building, the lights came back on. "That wasn't supposed to happen," Carney whispered to Barry. "Stop talking and walk," the man with the gun yelled. The gate opened to let the group of 5 in, and then closed behind them. Other guards came out of the smoke to see who it was. They motioned them forward. They were ushered into the building, in a side room. It was next to the safe. That's where they found Donald and Anna. Donald just shrugged as the newcomers were sat down in chairs next to them. Nobody said anything, as the men with guns didn't look too friendly. An hour later, a man in a cheap suit walked in. On the table in front of him sat all the wallets of Barry's group with the IDs pulled out and set on the table. The man looked at one of them and said, "Well, Anna Thomas, we meet at last. You're a hard person to dissuade. I do love that battery of yours. I tried to buy it from your father, but he seemed to think it was worth billions more than the 20,000 I offered him. Who are your friends?" "I don't know. I was just taking a walk trying to figure out how to steal the battery back. I found this guy here. The other 2, well, they look like utility workers to me." The man shook his head. "If only I could trust you. What am I going to do with all of you?" "You can let us go. We have to get back to work. We're on overtime, you know," Carney said. Anna turned to glare at him. "I don't think that's true. It was an elaborate plan, one that almost worked. Too bad your battery isn't here. You spent too much time looking for it to make your escape. You foiled all of our systems, though. An amazing job. You have my compliments." "I have really good lawyers. We'll make bail in a couple of hours," Barry replied. "I'm sure you do, but I can't turn you over to the police. They ask too many questions, and a trail would only bring unwanted attention to our operations. No, we've been compromised here. We'll have to pull up stakes and move. Of course, we'll change our name. You'll never see us again. As for you, Anna, we don't have your battery, so there is no more use looking for it. She turned pale and gasped. A guard came in and whispered something in the man with the suit's ear. He handed him a note, then pointed to one of the driver's license. I see. The man picked up the license and looked at it more closely, then sighed. This is where we part ways. In a flash, Anna pulled the gun out from her bra and grabbed the man in the suit, sticking the gun to his head. Order your men to stand down. The man swallowed hard. Drop your guns, men. When they did, Barry, Donald, and Carney grabbed them. Make way. We're coming through, Anna demanded. Barry and the guys grabbed their wallets off the table, then followed Anna. I was going to let you go, the man in the suit protested. I don't believe you. Charlie, show her the note. One of the guards handed over a piece of paper. She read it. I still don't believe you. The 5 of them and their hostages walked through the gate back to the van. They let the man go and then drove off. Chapter 23. What did the note say? Barry asked as they were driving away. You don't know? No, that's why I asked. The note said to let you go because you owned the company. It didn't say anything about the rest of us. I own the company? Well, I think you'd know if you own a company or not. She glared at him. Not necessarily. I have a business manager who deals with all of my assets. What? You have so much money that someone has to spend it for you? No, it's not like that. He was getting defensive. What is it like then? If her stare could bore a hole through him, it would have. He thought for a minute. Okay, it's like that. I get a report once a month. She didn't say anything, but nodded, still glaring. Meanwhile, Carney was making his way to a safer part of town. He pulled over and got out. Help me with this, he said to no one in particular. He then started peeling the utility logos off the van. The rest of them came out and helped. He took off his vest and threw it in a dumpster. Barry did the same. When does the plane arrive? Carney asked. Should be here now. I'll drive you to get the car, and we can turn them both into the rental company as soon as they open. Let's get out of this town. Do you think they will come after us or phone the police? Anna asked. No, at least I hope not. If I do own the company, they won't bother. Anna rolled her eyes. What? Barry shrugged. Anna and Barry were dropped off at the motel. They collected all the luggage and checked out of the rooms. Piling everything in the car, they drove towards the airport. I'm sorry I yelled at you, she said. It's just, well, I can't imagine having so much money that you don't even know what you own. It's not as easy as it seems, trust me. If it weren't for you owning the company, we might all be dead right now. I guess, in a way, you saved my life. You shouldn't even have gone down there. That was Donald's assignment. All you had to do was cut the fence and come back. Barry had suppressed it for so long that it came out more forcefully than he had hoped. You're right. I got caught up in the moment. Why did that bother you anyway? It worried me. I like you. I mean, a lot. She smiled. That's nice. Then kissed him on the cheek. They arrived at the airport, but the car rental place wasn't open yet. Before they got out of the car, he turned to her. Sorry we didn't get the battery. I don't know where they could have hidden it. That was so sweet of you to try. This time, she put both hands around his neck and kissed him soundly on the lips. There was a tapping on the glass. Carney was standing outside the car. If you two are finished, you can return the car, They've just opened. I want to get out of this town while I'm still alive. They opened the door and stepped out. Donald came up behind Anna and said, "Get a room." "Mind your own business," she scolded. After getting the luggage out of the car, the four of them walked over to an airplane and boarded it. It was a quiet flight home on the chartered plane. All of them fell asleep. When they landed, they dispersed to their own homes. Ava was glad to see Barry. She had missed him terribly. "You poor thing. I'll make you a cake roll to cheer you up," she said after she hugged him. Rosita hugged him too. Barry walked up to his bedroom. It had been a long night full of stress and adventure. He made one phone call before going to bed. After talking to John Adams, he went to sleep. Chapter 24. The next day, Barry woke up late. He couldn't believe he had slept for 12 hours. Stiff and sore, he climbed out of bed. Was it a dream? I hope it was a dream. He knew that it wasn't. He slipped on clothes and stumbled down to the living room. Smelling bacon, he turned to Ava and smiled. She waved back. He headed straight to the vase, turned on the rotator and the light, and then watched it go round and round for a few minutes. Someone slipped their hand into his hand and held it. He turned to see Anna standing next to him. "I came early to see you, but you weren't up yet, so I talked to Ava until you came down. Thank you for all you did for me. Nobody's ever tried that hard to make me happy before." She kissed him on the cheek. Looking over, she said, "That's a really beautiful urn." Vase. "I'm going to go home over the break and try to put Daddy's notes together. I may be able to glean enough information to try again." He shook his head. "No need." "Do you think I should just give up then?" "You're probably right. It almost cost us our lives. I just wanted to give my father a legacy." Barry smiled. "It's right here. There's no need to build another one." He opened the door to the cabinet under the vase. There on the shelf was the battery and the paperwork. "What? It's here? Barry, how did you get it? You're a wonderful man. It's amazing." She touched the battery, making sure it was real. "Where did you get it?" "It was here the whole time." "What? The whole time?" "The whole time we were trying to steal it. It was sitting on this shelf. I talked to John Adams, my company's CEO, about Vadum having a battery and me wanting it back. He went back to the office and researched the company. Their stock was trading low, so he bought the company and had them drive the battery over here. He missed me by an hour. Figuring I was on vacation and not wanting to be bothered, he put it on the shelf and then went home." Her jaw dropped open. "We did all of that for nothing?" "I'm afraid so." She was laughing so hard she leaned against the cabinet. "Careful. I can't afford another vase." This only caused her to laugh harder, but she complied and took a couple of steps back. Ava and Rosita came around the corner to see what was going on. "Breakfast is ready?" he asked. "Yes." He grabbed Anna's hand. "I'm hungry. Let's go eat." Anna finally stopped laughing, and they all sat down at the table. After breakfast, he volunteered to drive Anna home. "I don't like your car," she admitted. He was taken aback. "It's a Ferrari." "I know. You've told me that over and over again. Let's go car shopping." "But it's a Ferrari." "It'll make a good trade-in." Barry didn't trade in the car. There was plenty of room in the 5-car garage for another one. 4 hours later, the couple came home with a Chevy SUV, like the one they had rented in Spokane, except without the bullet holes. When they came back into the house, Ava and Rosita had gone home for the evening. "What should we do now? Do you want to watch a movie? I have a killer home theater." She shook her head. "I'm starving. What about dinner? and then maybe a movie. Dinner? That's such a great idea. Yes, I have the same great idea about this time every day. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Carney, do you have any food in that place of yours? Great. Anna and I will meet you down there. When he hung up, she was staring at him. You called Carney? Absolutely. Let's go. Really? Come on. When they arrived downtown, Barry knocked on the side door. It opened a minute later. Hi, guys. Welcome. Anna, I started a steak just for you. But if you're a vegetarian, I can whip up something else really fast. No, a steak sounds great. She sniffed as she walked in. It smells great, too. Carney turned to Barry. I've ordered everything I'll need for the place. I'll send you the bill. Should be open in 2 months or so. I'm looking forward to it. Wait, you bought a restaurant? No, it's Carney's restaurant. I'm just helping him get it going again. Oh. Carney went into the kitchen and came out with 3 hot ribeyes. Anna tried hers. Man, this is amazing. Thank you. Months later, after the grand opening of Carney's Cattle Company Steakhouse, the 4 co-conspirators, Barry, Donald, Anna, and Carney, sat around talking. Well, what's new with you, Anna? Donald asked. I have a new rock. She held up her engagement ring. Barry finally popped the question. Both Donald and Carney congratulated them. Donald cleared his throat. I have a new job. Carney has been working around my school schedule instead of me having to schedule my school around the hours at the country club. Excellent, Barry replied. Carney turned to Anna. Whatever happened to that battery of yours? She grimaced. I had an independent lab do the testing. It takes 20 Rex batteries to power a car. They predicted the cost of each around $500 to $1,000. The car ran like a champ for 6 months without a recharge. Wow, that's amazing, Carney said. The problem is once the battery is drained, there's no way to recharge it. They tried everything. It didn't work. So you have to put between $10,000 and $20,000 back into your car every 6 months? It's not cost effective, so it's back to the drawing board. Sorry to hear it. Donald was all smiles. So, the internal combustion engine lives to fight another day. I'm afraid so. He stood up and extended his glass. Here's to good friends, a good job, and really good news. Long live the muscle car.